Hey everyone, welcome back to the Personal Transformation Podcast. My name is Dan Storey, and today I'm joined by an artist. Now, art scares me. I remember back at school, my 9th grade teacher, Mr. Lockie, oh my goodness, I'm having flashbacks just thinking about this, but going into art class and just sitting there and trying to make some colors or shapes appear on the paper in front of me. And I was not talented. Let's just talk and say that. I was not talented as a kid. And there were people around me that were able to do these amazing things. And I think, there's a difference that, when you're a kid, if you can't do something, you quickly find a way to do something else. And that is less embarrassing. That is absolutely less embarrassing. And you're kind of not, just in there with the stick figures. We'll talk about stick figures in a minute. But Nancy Dillingham Marks, who's joining us today, has got a different perspective on that. This is the fun thing. So Nancy, and she'll tell us the story in a moment, but went from a corporate career for many, many years, and then decided, you know what, I'm going to go work with glass. I'm going to become an artist. I'm going to teach other people to become an artist as well. So along the way, she's, learned a lot about herself, a lot about life, but also about the mindset and psychology that goes into being an artist. So Nancy, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Dan, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
This is a fun topic, right? So I think there's a massive crossover between art. And you've got a good, interesting definition on art. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Effectively being creative and thought processes and how we kind of get stuck. So I'm curious, why on earth? Like, how do you go from a corporate career? How do you even get started in the glass space?
Well, I have a silly way I got involved. My parents relocated from Massachusetts to Southern California so I could be with them in their later years and help out. And they were living at what's called an assisted living facility. I refer to it as a docked cruise ship because it's got entertainment, excursions, all your meals are included, even housekeeping is included. And one of the classes that was included was a fused glass class. I'd never heard of fused glass. I've heard of blown glass, I've heard of stained glass, but I'd never heard of fused. And my mom was so excited. She was giddy. She was like a little girl, so excited about this art form. And I thought, you know what, I should take a class so that when mom and I want to do something together, this will be something special. That'll be just the two of us. And I signed up for a class. It was a little bit of a drive to get there, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And as the day was approaching, I was a little kid with my feet in the ground going, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. Why in the world am I doing this? I'm going to look like a fool. Oh, come on. You can imagine all the rest of the things I said. And I stopped myself and said, I'm doing this for mom. I am doing this for mom, and she doesn't care if I'm good at it or not. It's something I can do with her. And that's what got me over that initial hurdle into the classroom.
Beautiful. I think that there's something about that, and I'm, again, having so many flashbacks to this. And I remember as a kid trying to make things in art class or design class, and, you had various bits and pieces, and it always came out looking like one thing, and that was an ashtray. Like, do you remember that? You're trying to make a bowl or a vase or something, but it just ends up completely flat, and you're like, oh, we can use it as an ashtray. Now, people don't smoke, so those things are just paperweights, I guess. But that's a phenomenal way of getting started. And so, you kind of went to this class. So what was it? How did you approach that then? You managed to kind of get off the sofa and kick yourself into gear to get there. What was it like walking through the door of that first class?
It was so uncomfortable. I felt like an imposter. I didn't have a right to be here. And it wasn't a very big class, so that was good. So, hopefully nobody would really notice me. And there had been some disruptions during the class, so the instructor was kind of tied up with a problem that had happened somewhere else in the studio. And so, okay, good. That's one less person who can criticize me or judge me. And I was looking around at everybody else, exactly what I didn't want them to do to me. And I'm looking at their stuff and I'm going, okay, this is what I do. This is how I do it. Oh, look, these colors are really pretty. Ooh, what other colors? I stopped looking at anybody else and I started looking at the glass. And the instructor had already gone over safety, so that was easy. And I was looking at it and I'm looking at it. I'm like, Ooh, I like these colors. Ooh, Mama liked this color. Oh, I'm going to make something with this color because this is one of Mom's favorite colors. And all of a sudden, all of the things sort of floated out of my head of no, I can't, negative, all that kind of stuff. And I started embracing the glass. There was like this energy that came off the glass that said, this is safe. This is a safe space. And I had a great time. In fact, the necklace that I'm wearing is one of my very first pieces that I ever made.
That's very cool. I'm looking at the colors. I can see some orange and a couple of blues in there. So these are the colors that are important to you and your mum, and you just thought, I'm just going to give it a go, just see what I can make.
Exactly. And I just did very abstract. I did not worry about trying to create a design. I wasn't trying to create a masterpiece. I just wanted to put some colors together that would be pretty and something I could wear or she could wear. And I just wanted to have a good time. And you have to wait about a week. So with fused glass, unlike blown glass where it's running all the time, it's 2000 degrees. Sorry, I do Fahrenheit. And you have to be constantly moving. Fused glass is sitting in a comfortable environment and the glass is all room temperature as well. And you're kind of going at your own pace. I mean, obviously there's a time limit in a classroom environment, but then they take the glass piece that you've put together and they put it in a kiln, similar to a ceramics kiln. And it usually goes between 14 and 1500 degrees. And you wait about a week to get it back because they want to fill the kiln. And all of a sudden it's smooth, it's shiny, it's shinier than the glass was. Some glass, there's actually colors that come out more because of the heat. And it just transforms. And it's like, I looked at my pieces when I picked them up and go, they made a mistake. These aren't mine. These are really pretty. These can't possibly be mine. They made a mistake. Do I go? Because I was in my car already. I hadn't started driving. But I'm like, do I go back in and tell them that they made a mistake? Okay, let's see. I took a picture. That's right. I took a picture before I left. I wanted to see what it was going to look like. I took a picture. I opened my camera. And they were my pieces. There was no mistake. I made these really pretty pieces myself. And I have to tell you, driving home, I was singing in the car. I was giddy. I had so much energy. And there wasn't a negative thought in my head about anything.
Give me a perspective. Because beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yes.
So when you say pretty, how are you assessing that?
I liked it.
Perfect.
I don't really care if somebody else likes it or not. I liked it. And if there was an imperfection somewhere, I didn't care. And, you know, I've learned over the years that most of the time I do have imperfections. I'm multitasking, unfortunately, a little bit more than I should be. But I've learned to do what I call embracing my imperfections because I see them. But when you look at the same piece, you don't see them. You see the colors, you see the beauty, you see the energy that's coming off of them, but you don't see the imperfections. I do. But rather than going, oh my gosh, oh, people are going to hate this or oh, whatever you want to say, I didn't have to because they didn't see it. And it was the first few times when somebody would look at one of my pieces, I would be like holding my breath. Please don't see the imperfections. Please don't see them. They never, ever did.
It's interesting. The reason I ask you is because I literally just posted on LinkedIn today. I've just started a newsletter. So, you know, I'm a writer. I've been writing, I think my first blog post is actually it's 2007. So 17 years ago in November that I first hit publish. And at the time I was a terrible writer. I argue that I'm only slightly better now, but you know, I write because I want to write it. I need to write it. It needs to come out of me. And, you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it's always stuff that, you know, I believe in and feel comfortable about. And I think over time, that's something that's taken me a while to grasp, is that I need to be comfortable with it. I don't care what other people think so much. I'm going to write my way, my voice, my topics, and I'm going to express me. And that's what I need to do. And you know, everything that I look into from a from a writing perspective is if you try and please people with your writing, you're not being authentic. And it's the authenticity which you need as a creative, I think, and being comfortable with that.
Absolutely. And Dan, I don't do well writing, but I try on occasion too, because it's another outlet.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. I found fused glass as an outlet. I tried ceramics, and yes, I brought home the ashtrays as well. I tried painting, and yeah, you couldn't tell what that was. And it bothered me if we were all supposed to try to do exactly the same thing. For some reason, that mentally doesn't work for me, because I know everybody else is going to be better than I am. But if we don't have to all do exactly the same apples or a tree or whatever the item is, then somehow I feel much more open and more creative and artistic because of that.
What was it that took you from that first class? We thought, right, I'm going to do this so I can kind of connect with my mum and understand it a little bit better. What was it that had to happen for it to become a hobby for you? Like to become a regular thing that you wanted to spend time doing? What were the shifts? What were the realizations that happened for you to say, you know, I'm going to put some time into this?
A new studio opened very close to home. And we actually took my mom for her 85th birthday there. It was the first birthday party they had at the studio because they were so new. Most people didn't even recognize they were there yet. And most people don't know what fused glass is, so people are a little more hesitant to try something new. But mom did. So I got mom little, or should I say mum, because you're in Britain. Sorry.
Well, actually, technically, I'm in the US. So I am British, but now we're growing up in the US. I'm going to say growing up. I'm not growing up. I think I'm grown, but mostly. But my daughter is in kindergarten. She's literally, I can hear her screaming right now, but she's saying mom. So I'm getting used to the mum.
Okay, good. I have a dear friend who's in the UK, and we tease each other on that word. No other word, just that one. But so I got her little cards like you would get a kid that she filled out and invited them to her birthday party. And we had the party at this new studio, and the energy in the studio, the way it was built out, the colors of the walls, the instructor, all of it just aligned for me like like a lightning bolt. Like, duh, this is where you belong. And I had such a good time. My mom's friends they told her it was the best birthday party they'd ever been to. And that, of course, made mom feel even better. It was just, everything just lined up beautifully. And so being so close to home, I could come here easily. And I did. And the more I got involved with the art and exploring it and learning about it, the more I enjoyed it. Now, I tried ceramics, painting, woodworking, music, writing. I'm sure there's some, knitting, crocheting, cooking, photography. None of them, photography was like the only one that kind of stuck with me of making me feel good doing it. But I wasn't doing artistic photography. I was doing a photo of a beautiful thing that I see. But I wasn't waiting for the sun to hit just right or those reflections off of, whatever. My nieces and nephews are phenomenal photographers. But again, I love what I did. And I don't judge myself anymore against anyone else.
I like the photography side as well. I think there's a technical aspect and a scientific aspect to setting up apertures and shutter speeds and all those kind of things, which I find really interesting. I've managed to take in my entire life one photo that I'm extremely proud of. And that was, I remember a photographer just showing me one thing on my camera, and I was like, oh, wow. Like literally since then, I haven't been able to replicate it. But it's amazing, right? But I like, there's other things, I've tried painting, I've tried doing a lot of stuff around that. Gardening as well is another way of kind of getting out there and doing things. But you seem to have challenged yourself and put yourself out there to try and find some form of creative outlet. What was it that was driving that? Was there anything, as you look back and you think, was it something you needed to channel? Was it something you were trying to get away from? What was kind of driving that constant pursuit of a creative outlet?
Actually, several things. One, my dad was a college professor, and he learned something from one of his professors that he would quote over and over again, that if there's nothing else you learn in this class, learn you have to have a hobby. And you need to start right away because you need it throughout your life. And I don't even remember the exact words, but you need it throughout your life. And then when you retire, you're going to love having that hobby that you get to embrace even more so. So my dad had music as a hobby as well as model railroading, European model railroading. And during COVID, he was working on the railroad. He was just chugging away, making out different layouts and decorating and the landscaping and the people. And each one had a story associated with it. So he took it to so many different levels. And, you just go in and you watch the train run, and he'd have these little games. He'd pull a number out of a box, and he had to line up the cars in that order, that type of thing. And that all fascinated me. I loved what it did for him and realized that's what I wanted as well. So it is a relaxation. It is the capability of stepping away from something else, usually at that point that is driving you crazy. Whether you've got a mental block on what you want to write, using the right words, whether it's you're trying to put a proposal together and this just isn't quite what you're trying to say, step away from it and do something else. And that I always tried, but I never tried it with something creative or artistic. And so I was always looking for that sort of creative outlet. And I look back and realized that there were many times I did have a creative outlet. It just didn't fit my mold of what I thought that was. So I was very involved with operations, operations, accounting, supply chain in small degree, sales. And so I would find creative ways to be able to organize the information, not just alphabetically, but to organize it in such a way that it was helpful. An example is when I was working for Sony Pictures Entertainment, I was responsible for all of the knowledge of the infrastructure because I had to pay the bills. I had to make sure we kept licensing up. I had to make sure if we were setting down a particular software that we knew when it expired and who it was with and, what machine that was on, all those kinds of things. So I actually went through and cataloged the mainframes, the AS400s, the other equipment that we had. And I could tell you which line of business it was for, how much memory it was taking, when we got it, and what it was working for. So that if we needed to put something else on that machine, I could quickly go and look at how much memory and utilization we had on that machine. Did we even have the room, or do we going to have to add additional hardware and memory and storage, all those kinds of things? So it took a while. But I have to tell you, every budget season, it was such a godsend for not just myself, but for the people that needed to know that information. If they were building something new, do we have the hardware and the infrastructure to handle the new product? And if we were going to decommission something, what did that open up for us? And so people would come to me at the last minute because, of course, it wasn't forefront on their mind that we needed to do this. And it was the 11th hour and we needed to know. And I just opened my little bucket of information and it was boom, boom, boom. And people would just look at me like, how in the world did you do that? And I realized that was creativity thinking, very creative to find a way to make this easier for everybody. And also so they didn't have to come to me. If they knew where that stuff was, which was on our servers, they could have gone to it and looked themselves. So I realized looking back, I did have a creative thought process. It just had a different wrapper on it.
I think you raised two very interesting points there, and I try and remember both of them before I stop speaking. So the first one is this idea of creativity. Now I've got a book. I don't think it's on that bookshelf. It's somewhere in storage. I've got too many bookshelves around the world, too many boxes of books around the world. But creativity being this idea of expert problem solving it's the ability for us, once you've spent a lot of time in a system or an environment, is to be able to take multiple pieces of information and fuse them. Sorry for the glass reference.
I like that.
What I did there. But fuse them in a way that most people would not put those connections together. So for you, like you say, creativity there is saying, how can I take all this information and create a solution, even though people aren't really looking for it right now? So that's using your expertise to really create a solution that hasn't been considered before. So that's a phenomenal application of creativity. I think this is where the 10,000 hours element comes in. Is once you spent a lot of time in there, you see the connections before they even kind of start to become apparent to other people. The second thing you mentioned there is the change of energy. It's the kind of distraction. It's the mental rest that you get from doing something completely different. So, I spend a lot of time sitting behind a laptop and typing things and being cognitive, trying to think about things. And so for me, and actually one of the projects I did a couple of years ago was I started woodwork. Now I'm terrible at woodwork. Like everything that I do turns into a CD rack or an ashtray, as we've already mentioned. But I wanted to create an acoustic board, right? An acoustic soundproof board, which was effectively lots of pieces of wood that were different lengths that would act as a diffuser of some kind. I went and bought a saw, a miter saw, like a power tool, which you had to kind of do these things and wood, paint it, all this stuff. It took me a long time to do, but what I really enjoyed was just the difference of doing something with my hands, like mechanical and kind of messy and dirty, that was not typing away. And I could be extremely tired at the end of the day mentally, but I would go and do that, and I could spend hours just in the garage, just doing this thing, and it energized me. It completely energized me. And people are not, are you not tired? It's like, no, I'm not. Well, how can I be tired? I might be tired in this element or this element, but it's strange that when you change your environment or do something entirely different with your brain, the energy levels come back.
Absolutely. I actually had, early on, I had a mom bring in her daughter and her daughter's friend. And she was so harried, and she's just like, I'm going to go sit at another table. You have Wi-Fi, right? Yes. Okay. I'm going to go sit over here because I have a project I have to get done, and I have to get, it's really important, and I'm just really stuck on it, and I have to. And I said, okay, take a breath. I said, you have to come over and learn how to break glass with the girls. And she goes, oh, no, I don't have time. I said, it takes just a couple of minutes. You just have to step away from what you're doing. You have to understand what the girls are doing, because they're going to want to talk about it later. And you're going to want to know what it felt like, what it is. So just a couple of minutes, I promise. It won't take very long. She came over, she broke her first piece, and she's like, I'm taking the class too. And she realized the trigger, how fast just one little thing did for her. The next morning, she actually called me, so excited. She got home. It took her no time at all to finish this project that she was so harried about, because she had kind of that mental break, that clarity of something else that took her mind off of it. And all of a sudden she could clearly see what needed to be done. And she got it done. She was just, it was so much fun listening to how excited she was. And so it's become a story at the studio. And whenever she's here, I always quote, this is the person who, and she just laughs and she goes, she's absolutely right. She goes, I don't know what I would have done had she not asked me to still cut and break glass.
It's really, I remember, I think it was a book called Hyperfocus or something along those lines, which is this idea that we're constantly in the zone and we're constantly thinking about our problems and challenges and what we have to do from a work perspective. And that only accesses a certain proportion of our brain. And by changing the way we think and like forcing ourselves to take a rest or think about something different, that's when the kind of creativity element sparks in. And, whether we call it unconscious, conscious, or whatever, we've got so much brain capacity that can think about stuff that, we're trying to muscle our way through this kind of problem over here. And the unconscious brain is going, I could do it, just ask me a question, go to sleep, and I'll figure it out for you when you wake up.
Yeah. I wake up a lot of times around 3 o'clock in the morning with the answer. So, and it's a running joke. We're all pretty much, my friends here, all are pretty much between about 1 and 4 a.m. that we wake up and suddenly have an answer to a question or a problem. And it's like, duh. My problem is then I'm thinking it through even more so. So I'm like getting so excited because now I want to think through how I'm going to, whatever it is. It's a funny routine. And I just laugh at myself because I can just go back to sleep and it'll still be there.
keep that notepad by the bed, scribble it down, and then close your eyes again and get back off. Yeah, I'm still not sure. There's 2 thoughts on this kind of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning thing. And one is the Wayne Dyer one, which is he says, that's wake up, listen, that's when the angels are talking to you, or something similar along those lines. But I also heard the other day that it's when your blood sugar gets low and you just wake up because you're hungry. So I'm not entirely sure which one of those I believe. Maybe both. Just wake up, listen to the angels, have a snack, and go back to sleep. So we can do that.
But I don't have the snack.
Well, that's just me. I've been on a diet for a very long time, and now I'm able to eat a little bit. I didn't mention, but I'm a bodybuilder, and food becomes crazy. So yeah, snacking is entirely appropriate. Let's talk about this, you as a teacher then, because I've been a teacher. I think teaching something gives you a different appreciation of two aspects. Number one is the subject matter that you learn about, and then the other one is about other students and what it's like to be a student. Let's start with students first. So you've mentioned mindset a couple of times. What are the biggest shifts that you see as a teacher when people come in? What's the biggest kind of blocker or things that get in the way? And then what is it that helps them have something that they realize that allows them to kind of be a bit more creative?
It actually is very similar to me. I still, and I mean, I've been doing this almost a full 5 years now. I've had the studio now. When someone says, I'm not creative or I'm not artistic, I just came because someone said I needed to come and she wanted company. And I laugh and I said, you know what? That's how I started too. I said the same thing. And they look at me and I'm like, no, I'm serious. I used to say the same thing. And if you look back in my life, I don't have things like this at all in my house. Or my mom doesn't have these things in her house for me either. And they just kind of look at me because it's like they're thinking about it. And I'll say, I'm guessing you can't draw a stick figure either. And they're like, no, I can't. And I said, neither could I. And I said, but let's look back and just say, who says a stick figure has to look like a stick figure? Who says we have to color inside the lines? Who says, whatever phrase they want to use? And I said, and now people will walk in. I have a gift shop in the front. So a lot of people will walk in, look at the gift shop first and say, can I make this? And I said, yes, someday, not today, but someday. Absolutely. If that's what you want to make, you can make anything you want. And they just look at me. And I said, believe me, I have seen so much. So I have what's called artists in residence, and they are artists who have reached a level where they don't need instruction for what they want to be doing. Now they might take future classes later, but they're really comfortable, and everyone has a different style and technique. There are no two people in here that do the exact same stuff. Now, one might inspire someone else to do something, maybe with the colors, but nobody's copying, everybody's so individual, and we encourage that. So we've all come up with things we never, ever thought we could have done. But it all started with an introduction to fused glass class. And so the artists are all really open. People come over and go, oh my God, I could never do that. And they said, don't say that. I started with the same class you did. Here I am. And they look at her, and this particular person is Abby. And she is probably, I think she's just now about 4.5 years in glass art. And she's got a creative mindset to begin with. So she's not afraid of trying things, which is great. But I was. And so it took me longer to get to the places where she was at. So what? There's nobody with a time clock saying you must get this done by this time or else. So mindset is so many times, to me, you say something to yourself and you say it long enough and enough times, you believe it. Even though there's really nothing you can base it on, because maybe a teacher said, you're not very artistic. And I hate that any teacher would ever say that. But the truth is, this is what you believe. It doesn't matter what somebody else said. I was told once in high school, I shouldn't wear skirts because I have long legs. And she goes, you look like you have sticks that are sticking out of your skirt. It just doesn't look attractive. I was devastated. I wouldn't wear a skirt for the longest time, or a dress. And as my friends would go, why don't you ever wear anything but pants? And I would tell them the story, and they're like, that's insane. Why in the world did you let one person's comment impact you like that? You know better. And I was dumbfounded. Yeah, why did I? Why did I decide I couldn't do things? My sister and my dad could pick up a pen or a paint or chalk, and they could do all kinds of stuff. But again, I wasn't looking at it when they first started. I was looking at it much later in their careers. And it's so funny how I judged myself incorrectly for so long. And it was something as simple as wanting to do something with my mom. And my mom changed my world again. She was a phenomenal woman. She was very supportive. She was absolutely a strong and impactful person with a big heart and who cared about people and doing the right thing. And I just laughed that, in her 80s, she was still impacting my life. And I just am so blessed.
I love the idea of an 85th birthday party as well. As somebody who's got a 5th birthday party rapidly approaching, the fact that the number on the invitation, but you still do invitations, is just that makes me smile a huge amount. So I think you're right. The words "I am" and whatever follows that definitely, it can empower us. Like if we say things that are more empowering, then we can believe it, and then that will empower us to go off and act accordingly. But also, like say, people often use those in a very limited way, or I am not this, that, and the other. So yeah, teachers have a big impact. As a teacher, I think I'm always trying to think of the best for my students and never want to place my own limitations on them. So, but it's challenging as a teacher, and you're not aware. But yeah, teachers, you have such an important responsibility. So act appropriately. I think you've talked about getting people comfortable, trying and doing things small, and just starting to be playful. I think that's useful. There's a lot of work on habits and expanding that as we go through. What's been the biggest impact on you as being a teacher? How has your life changed as you look through the eyes of the students?
Well, I actually taught my senior year in high school television production. We had the local cable network, very small station in our junior high. And this was back in the late 60s, early 70s. And I fell in love with that. Scientifically, mechanically, I was right there and I loved it. So I was directing the town meetings, and I was directing the League of Women Voters. They would contact my mom and ask my schedule. And so my senior year, I created my own program. I taught 7th and 8th graders in the science department on a quarterly basis class. And it was very interesting and dynamic to learn about teaching. And I have much more respect for teachers than I had ever had prior. The ones who wanted to learn, oh my gosh, I would give them so much time and energy. And I learned how to present things in multiple ways. So some people learn better by watching, some people reading, some people doing. And so I would try to find ways to make it easier for them, for each one, depending on what worked better for them. So I never called anybody out. I never made anybody feel uncomfortable. And the class always started out to be much larger than the amount of people we could have that people signed up. So I made it sound much harder and much more difficult than it was going to be to weed out those who really weren't interested. They just thought it was going to be a, slide through class. And so I really did end up with a very good group of kids who really wanted to learn. I had one that was not. And I really struggled. I did not do well with it. I went to my science department mentor and some of the other teachers who I adored. I adored all my teachers in junior high and high school. I don't remember the ones from elementary school much. But they were all so supportive people. And I would say, how do I deal with this? And they said, you just got to kind of remind her and focus her. We know exactly who you're talking about. We totally understand what's happening for you. And I mean, the other students would tell her to be quiet. The other students were telling her, stop cheating. The other students would be like, no, you're supposed to do this with me. You're not supposed to be sitting over there. I didn't even have to say those things. But I ultimately went to her mom, who was a teacher, and I just said, I'm the teacher for this class. I know your daughter, you're aware of all of this. I said, but something's not right. she's trying too hard to get attention. And I said, it clearly was not my attention or the students in the class's attention. So I have to turn this around and think it was your attention she's trying to get. And she gave me the dirtiest look. Oh my gosh, she was so mad at me. And I said, you don't have to like what I say, but I have to tell you, no other answer makes any other sense. I said, I can put all the scenarios together in my head. Nothing makes sense except she's trying to get your attention. And she told me that I had to give her daughter extra credit and that she had to have a special project she could do. And I looked at her. Now, again, I'm 17 years old. I looked at her and I said, are you going to follow? No, I couldn't flunk her. The most I could give her was a C. I mean, so, and this is 7th and 8th grade. It doesn't affect anything. And I said, are you going to go through high school, junior high school, and college and tell the teachers what they have to do for her? I'm confused. Why is that our responsibility? I said, help me understand, because someday maybe I want to be a teacher. So help me understand that, because you are a teacher. Help me understand that. And I got another dirty look. And she couldn't explain it to me. And she actually had her daughter come and apologize. And I got word from a couple of the teachers, because I graduated soon after that. And they said, I don't know what you and her mom said, because I know she was furious with you. But I have to tell you, whatever you said helped. And I'm like, okay, what did I say? What did I say? That kind of thing. And so I can't do that here. This is a very different environment. This is not for credit. This is for fun. I try to keep my classes very lighthearted. They're usually 2 or 3 hours, and I'm teaching techniques. I'm not trying to teach how to be an artist, because everyone's different and everyone has their own creative outlet and desire. So we have a lot of inspiration in the studio, and we encourage people to try and imitate what we've done, but with their own color palette and their own style. And they're so surprised. It's like, you don't care if I copy you? I said, no, that's a compliment. And they look at me and I said, it is. You like what I've done. What better compliment could you give me? And their thing never looks like mine. But it loosened them up enough that they felt, I can do what I want. And it's okay. I'm in a safe zone. And that was pretty phenomenal. And it still is. And I love it every single day that somebody says that.
I love your experience as a teacher. That is a phenomenal story. I remember I was a teacher for a year, and I love teaching, and I'm not a massive fan of the education system. In things like that, I can't flunk you. You're going to fail in life if you don't have that approach, right? You've got, certificates of participation. I got one recently, and not really in the real world. It's just, you've got to go out and earn stuff. So I think there's an element of education that doesn't set that up. So well done for calling that out. But yeah, I remember having a student who was the disruptive one. And then one lesson, I was actually having an observation. This is a random thing, but I was being observed by another teacher. So this is kind of going on my scorecard. And he got up and just started talking. And I was like, okay, cool, let's see where this goes. It was the most eloquent speech I'd ever heard a kid of about 16 give. It was phenomenal. And he was talking about his own challenges and passions and things along those lines, and creating a very powerful argument. And I thought, isn't this interesting? It's like the subject matter that we're talking about in class isn't the thing that he wants to focus on and actually has passionate about. And I think that's one of the things as a teacher is you've got to realize that, not everybody wants to learn this stuff. But you're creating an environment where people want to come and be part of it. That's the interesting thing. And then you mentioned something there is you're not focusing on the end product, you're focusing on technique. And this is, I remember going back a few days, Bob Ross. Like I used to love Bob Ross and watching those kind of things, Happy Little Cloud, stuff like that. But Bob Ross, he always had the picture. You knew what it was supposed to look like. And he would kind of do these things, and it looked like he was just messing around on the canvas. Then suddenly this amazing art would appear, and I'd be trying to do it at home, and I'd have a blob on there. So the output was very different. And there's that kind of, I'm not quite Bob Ross. But for you, it's like, forget the output, forget it. You got something you're aiming at, but focus on the technique. Think about what you're doing as opposed to being attached to the outcome. And I think that's a big thing, right? Is if we can focus on the process, if we can focus on the enjoyment of just making stuff and doing things, regardless of how it comes out. Sometimes it's going to come out great. Sometimes it's going to come out, whatever. But like you say, you've got a week to wait for that. So, you're not going to find out immediately anyway. So just enjoy it. It's just the creation process is the important part as opposed to the outcome.
Exactly. And it's fun because I cry for, especially the people who said they weren't creative or artistic. I try to have them open. I wrap everything up in bubble wrap and everything because obviously it's glass and I put it back. And I ask them to open it while they're in the studio. And I love their facial expressions because they did exactly what I did every time. Okay, maybe not every time. 90% of the time, they look at it and go, "You made a mistake. This isn't mine. It's too pretty." And I laugh and I say, "Do what I did, what I had to do. I had to look at that picture that I asked you to take. Go back and look at the picture and look at your art." And they're like, "It really is mine." I said, "I did that exact same thing." And they just laugh and they said, "Thank you." I've had people come back and tell me how much more relaxed they were after the class. They came in stressed out when they left. They weren't. And it impacted them enough for them to want to tell me that. And I'm like, I'm so grateful. I am so grateful to have something in my life that I can enjoy so much and others do too. Now, does every single person embrace it? No, of course not. You know, it's like anything else. But they've tried it. And that's pretty phenomenal. And for those who don't want to try it, we have a beautiful gift shop. Unfortunately, we don't ship overseas yet. We're just shipping in the United States at this point. But there are Fused Glass studios around the world, and quite a few in the UK.
And like you said, your journey it didn't start and end at Fused Glass. It was photography, it was painting, it was sculpture, it was all of these things. There's so many different ways of getting it. So, Nancy, this has been a really fun conversation. I want just to, people are going to be listening to this and thinking, I'm still not creative. Give them the nugget. What's the one thing? How should they be thinking about starting a hobby or being more creative? What's the one piece of advice you wish these people would be able to kind of take to heart right now?
Really, the fact that when you have something that you can do that you enjoy, you don't have to be great at it, but that you enjoy, that you step aside from whatever it is you're doing on a somewhat regular basis. I'm not saying every day. I mean, even if you took 15 to 20 minutes a week, you could probably find that time to doodle, to grab crayons and just color. You don't have to have a lot of equipment to write, to cook, to dance, to sing, to sit down and just play, just to do something else that is completely different than what you do on a regular day-to-day basis. The benefits of it are more than you could ever imagine.
Phenomenal. Go out, try something new, change your headspace, like get out of that, whatever it is that you're normally doing, do the complete, opposite from a brain perspective. And, like you say, the energy will come, the solutions to other problems will come, and you'll be surprised at how you feel different about life. Nancy, This is phenomenal. I'm going to have to figure out how to do a Fused Glass class now. We might have to kind of head on down and kind of jump into the studio. But this has been a really good way of doing it. And like I said, art, however we define that, is about the creation process. And it's got nothing to do with anybody else. It's about what do we feel proud of creating and enjoy sampling. Either that be the eyes, you're talking about food now with the mouth, or however it is that we sample that art, then I think that's important. If people want to find out a little bit more about the work you're doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
The first way is my website. So Glass Arts with an S, collective.com. It's got the gift shop attached to it, as well as a gallery of art that is not for sale, but just lots of different things that we've done in this studio. And then the gift shop is not only my stuff, but my other artists in residence. So there's about 12 different artists in the gift shop. It's a pretty big size gift shop online. So we have it so that you can look by a particular type of product. Most of the glass is food safe, so you can look for it that way, or you can then look for it by the artists themselves if you find one that you particularly like. And then the registration for the classes is online. You actually take the classes in here in the studio, so it's a little bit of a commute for you, but it is a lot of fun. And that's the great way to get a hold of me. But I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at glassartscollective.com. I'm on a YouTube channel at glassartscollective.com. And I'm Nancy Marks on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. So if you are listening along, then just click on one of those things to stay in touch with Nancy. But this has been phenomenal. I'm excited to see more of the work, and thanks for sharing Just,
Yeah.
the life of a creative, it doesn't start off with, hey, I'm going to jump into this and be amazing. Everyone steps into it with I'm going to be terrible at this, but it's about being comfortable with that and persisting through it until you're able to create things of significant beauty. So Nancy, thanks for sharing your experience, and I hope
Thanks,
people
Dan.
who've been listening have taken plenty away from it. I'll see you next time on Personal Transformation Podcast.